about 6:03, and we'll start off with a roll call, if we could, please.
Okay. Member Wendy Fuller. That's you? Wendy? Here. Okay, that's great. Okay. Member Anna Olvera.
Here.
Member Joanne Roberts.
Here.
Member Stephen Martino.
Here.
Member Richard Benecke.
Here.
Chair Steve Cooley.
Here.
Treasurer Sharon Geiser.
Here.
Councilmember Santos.
Here.
And Mayor Carroll.
Here.
Okay, we have our quorum.
Is that Wendy Fuller? Is that Wendy?
This is Wendy Fuller.
Hi, Wendy. I hadn't met you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a quorum. We have, good.
Who are new members there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to hit that.
There you go.
We've got our quorum, so our two new members, Wendy and Anna, correct?
Yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. We're glad to have you. And we'll keep you busy. And we'll keep you intrigued. So I don't know what more you could ask for. The big, huge paychecks? No.
No.
So let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
It's gone.
It is gone. Well, we all know what it looks like, so we'll do it in our memory.
Oh, right there in the corner.
No, that's not.
No.
It's a flag, right there in the corner.
Is it all the way back? Let's pull it back.
Yeah, pull it out, put it in the corner.
Is it?
Yep.
There it is.
It was hidden.
Oh, there's a stand right there. Okay, perfect.
There it goes.
I pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, we have some adjustments to the agenda? No? Okay. And anybody have a conflict of interest they need to disclose? All right, then let's jump right in and go with the adoption of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to review those?
I think you have to do public comments first.
Oh, we do the public, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking, yeah. Do we have public comments tonight?
Yes, we do.
You might want to read that.
Okay. Any one person may address the committee on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table. Give it to the committee chair or secretary. There's a 3-minute limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the committee from discussing or taking action brought up by your comments. Okay, and
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Libby Uramovic.
Libby Uramovic. On August 23rd, the Securities and Exchange Commission issued the Beaumont Finance Authority a cease and desist from forging government documents in order to defraud banking institutions. 5 months later, this board approved a fraudulent audit. I don't even know what it means. On August 23rd, Alan Kapranikis was issued an order to never be allowed in bonds again because, as they quoted, he will never stop. He will never stop his craziness, so they banned him for life. I do not understand which people's, honestly, I just do not understand. Yet you don't know right from wrong. This is the June 2014 General Ledger. Since November of 2012, I have put in public records request on the first of the month for the General Ledger, the bank statements, all the financial records. You see this? June 2014. General ledgers are about 80, 90 pages long. On the end of the year, you got to close it, it's about 120 pages long. This is the June 2016 general ledger. Do you notice a slight difference? I received this on December, or was it January 2017, 2018, a year and a half after the close of the books, asking for it over and over and over. This is what I got. There's something horribly wrong when this is your June general ledger. Public records and how you treat the public is the two big red flags. Yeah, my time's almost up, and we know the city of Beaumont does not allow people to speak more than 3 minutes. I have not seen a general ledger since July 2016. They've all been removed from the city's website. Don't tell me you have financial books for 2017 when you've never done 2016. The general ledger is the basis. This is where it starts. That's why I pull it. All the information is right here, but you can't do a report unless you fill out your general ledger. If this is what your general ledger looks like, you have a serious problem. A city the size of Beaumont should have a finance director, 3 more accountants, and 6 to 8 clerks to put your books together. This city has until February 20th to set their books, and they haven't done anything except hire another lawyer.
Thank you.
Can't respond.
Any other public comments?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Now we can move on to the adoption of the minutes. Everybody had an opportunity to review those. Anybody have any comments, adjustments?
I will be abstaining on the December 11th minutes because I was not present at the meeting.
All right.
I will abstain also.
Okay. And then we also have the 8 January minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm abstaining from January. I
Okay.
was here for December.
Okay, let's, well, on both of those, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the December 11th minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, they've been approved. And do we have a motion for the 8 January minutes to be approved? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the minutes are both approved, and we'll move on to the next. Last meeting, we pushed back the appointment of a vice chair. At this point in time, we do need to appoint a vice chair. Real simply, the vice chair is available to meet the same as the rest of all of us, but has the added responsibility of chairing the meeting when the chair can't be available. And what has typically happened and what is expected is the vice chair will become the chair at the end of the chair's term. Typically, we ask for volunteers. It's not a lot of work. We're looking for a volunteer, and we have no problems with a new member being the vice chair. Throw you in, get you going just a little faster. So at that, anybody willing to volunteer? Now, for new members, let me tell you that I'm a relatively new member, and I was the vice chair for one whole meeting. So our chair resigned and moved on to something else. So do we have a volunteer, or are we just going to put a little pressure on somebody?
I would volunteer, but my term is up this year, so.
Okay. And I will say this, that when we formed the Finance and Audit Committee, we made an effort to not have an elected in either the chair or the vice chair position, because we really wanted it to be a community-driven
effort and not have any control, so to speak, by the electeds. So on that's why neither Ray nor I will volunteer on that. But I would encourage others. It's not any more work really than just going to the meetings, which is what you're doing now.
I'd volunteer, but again, I'm not, don't expect, this is my last year, so the expectations oftentimes is the vice chair becomes the chair, so, I mean, but if you don't mind that.
I'll nominate Richard Beneke.
And I'll second. Anybody opposed? And based on that,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you for being our new chair.
You should,
And,
you should see your bump in pay in the next paycheck.
Deeply looking forward to that.
and I will not be here next week.
Oh, that was,
Here next month, I don't care about next week.
No, I will not be here next meeting. We have a long-standing vacation.
So
And,
you're on Richard.
I think you were sucker punched, Richard.
Yes.
That wasn't,
But that's my trade-off. I was appointed and then told, oh, next meeting's the last one. Chair will be here.
I have no problem with that.
So,
Vice chair to me.
Way to go, Richard.
Great.
thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
all right. Then we're moving on to some reports. Look at that. We don't even have to ask her to stand up. She is so well-trained.
There you go. The first item that I have is the mid-year budget adjustment. That's the one I gave you this evening. I've been living and breathing a much larger version of this. Still have 2 departments I need to work with specifically. We're making sure we've got everything accounted for and all that. So, but I wanted you to be able to see what it is we're working on, and I should be able to finalize it so it can go to City Council at their meeting on the 20th for a full adjustment of the budget. Mostly it's realignment between line items that departments budgeted for and then how they actually spent it, learning that, you need to pull things apart, spread it out, don't put it all in one account and then say, oh, it's okay. So we're just making sure that everyone's getting the idea of how the budget's supposed to work. Yes.
I have a copy. I don't have a
Oh, you
copy.
didn't get,
Here,
I do.
oh, you got another one?
Extras?
Okay.
I had an extra and I didn't know why, so now I know. I
Oh,
thought
okay.
it was one of these kind of things. So mostly the budget adjustment is gonna just be a lot of shifting. It's moving things around. The way that it looks right now on the draft, there's a lot of columns, and I get that. So I have original, the first quarter adjustment, current, mid-year adjustment, and you can see the net effect of all of it. When you get to your total adjusted budget, it brings it pretty much back in line. That's what I expected would happen once we got everything kind of settled. And we're trying to take everything into consideration so that with any good fortune, if we have any kind of budget adjustment of the third quarter, it will be very minimal. I'm not expecting anything to happen drastically for the third quarter. Once we have this aligned and we've gotten all of our numbers and council has approved it, then we'll be in a much better position for the 18-19 budget and getting that set and having the directors get used to all the different account numbers and classifications. So this is mostly just to let you see where it is we stand at the moment. Like I said, it's still evolving a little bit, but we're getting really close now.
Is the 37 million net under variable, unfavorable, favorable, why is that so high? Are there some,
I think because I did the squishing so that I could get it on one page for you to see it, I think I missed a formula when I did it. I think it's looking at a lot of different rows, so it gave you a wonderful total there, which isn't quite what we want it to be, because the total expenses, that it should be a positive effect because we haven't spent all the money we budgeted, and the revenues should be a negative effect because we haven't gotten all the revenues we budgeted. So somehow that formula, I think, has not netted them. Instead, it added them together.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
That
two
needs to be,
unfavorable.
needs to be corrected, because that's very misleading.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. Yep,
Yeah, this is a draft. Please know this is a draft.
right,
That's where we're asking questions.
yeah.
Now, the tax is 11 million unfavorable again, in the top, very top column on the taxes collected.
Correct.
That's because of how your tax revenue comes in.
Right. The cycle for tax revenues, we get some in December, we get a big chunk in January, and the last big chunk in May. So they hit after the 12/31 date that this is for.
Is that number kind of consistent with what we were looking at last year in a May timeframe of receiving?
Oh, the difference there, it looks pretty close. We actually were doing some trend analysis on the tax revenues just this afternoon, and we were going to talk about it tomorrow morning. So we're looking to make sure that we have that in a good spot, and we're also looking at how to budget forward to make sure that we try and stay in line with how that moves up and down quite a bit, it seems like, so.
Okay, so on tax revenues, property tax revenues from residents and other businesses and real property, has all of that been captured by the city or transferred to the city from, let's say, the November due bill dates for property taxes to residents that have to be paid by the 10th of December?
That's
That all
why.
been transferred and captured?
That's why we don't get that next big chunk until January. It has to do with everyone that remits their property tax
Okay.
in December. And then the second installment's due in
That should be
April, and we get it
reflected
in
the
May.
January.
Right,
Okay.
right. And then, of course, we only get a small percentage of the property taxes, so. And I know you just got it, but I don't know if you have any other questions, but I can try to answer them, but
Okay. And intergovernmental,
yes.
I'm sorry, which one do we have here? We have a 0% remaining on that because that
Because-
mid-year adjustment took care of
Right.
everything. So
What
that's
happened
totally
was we get a grant and we spend the grant. We
Right.
didn't have the grant or the spending of the grant in the budget.
right.
So now I put them both in.
So it's
Just take
just
that.
accounting for the it coming in and just being
Right, and that particular grant is an annual grant the city gets. It's for recycling, the recycling program. And so since we know we're gonna be a part and participating in this every year, now that I have it in the budget, we can look at it on a go-forward if we don't, we got this. I mean, it's a
Right.
small amount, but you don't wanna forget about it.
Yeah. And then on your other financing sources,
Yes,
that's pretty much the same? Is it unanticipated and it just came in, or it was anticipated?
right. I think it's one of those line items. It's only $4,227, and I'm not sure if it's something that belongs in miscellaneous.
I see.
We don't really have other financing sources
Right.
themselves, so that may be one of the ones that I have to do some adjustments on, because that's the other thing we use this for, was to identify where we needed to make some journal entries.
So this is just a mechanism for recording it? Okay. And so because of the cyclical nature of the way that the revenues comes in, there shouldn't be any concern with the negative 69%, negative 75,
Yeah.
negative,
Right.
as soon as things are on track, so that as soon as that comes in,
Right.
we're in good shape again.
And the other thing to know is that when we look at the budget for the year, the budget's been set on an accrual basis. When we look at December, it's hard to know for sure what those accruals are going to be, and I've tried to estimate the ones that I knew. So there's still going to be even more adjustment when we get to December, especially in revenues, because sometimes they come in a little higher. Of course, you don't get them till August, but some of them you can't predict very well. So the revenue ones are a little harder to estimate from time to time, and especially at a 6-month point where I don't have a good sense of what the accruals are yet.
So I should be able to look at the next, your grouping of expenses, and those percentages should be
somewhat close.
to 50%.
Yes, and there are reasons why some are shifted a little more than others. We have, if I remember correctly, it's in community development. Community development, we have an open position, and so we've adjusted for that open position because for the first half of the year, it didn't get filled, so it goes.
Right.
But I don't want to make it go 50% because if we get someone hired in the next month, then I've not accounted for that additional cost I'm going to have from that point to the end of June. So that, we have some that shift a little bit. And the other one that we haven't spent yet at all is our public safety OES yet. So that one looks like, I haven't spent any, but that's true because that doesn't happen yet. It'll happen a little further on. And the city pool only has 39%, but the city pool will open Memorial Day and only be open for June.
Right.
Right. But most of these are pretty darn close to 50%.
I was really happy with the way that part turned out. Now it's just a matter of getting everyone to shift their individual line items.
Right.
Can I go on the revenue on your taxes?
Yes.
On the 6 months you have is the property transfer tax in there.
Yes.
I was looking on the general fund. It's not on this one. This is a summary of the budget.
Right.
So they will understand, or we will understand on this council.
Right.
Okay. On the on that line item of the property transfer tax in there. Your year-to-date, that's good. I mean, we have a budget of 230,000 in there. Now, let me go back on the tax measure A. We don't have any activities on that. Is that the one that you're talking about, accrual on that side?
Measure A is a revenue stream that the city of Beaumont has not been eligible for in the past because the city did not participate with WRCOG. Now that we're in WRCOG, we will become eligible. Well, we have become eligible for Measure A, and we are working with RCTC to determine timing of when it will be received. But we did a budget for the amount that we thought we would be getting in the short period this year. We just haven't, at this point in time, we haven't gotten any of those payments yet, but it wouldn't have started probably until about now anyway.
Okay, so right now, we're over budgeted on that, and also the motor vehicle.
Yes.
In lieu of taxes, we got 3.8 million in there. So right now, we're over budgeted on that side.
Right, that one comes in April, May. So that one we don't have yet, but it does come in April and May. The timing is different for that one.
That's very good. I mean, because there will be over budgeted of 4 million on that taxes.
Right, and
Is that
like I
correct?
said, it's very difficult
It
with the
is.
revenues to budget them because they are not month to month to month. They're not quarter to quarter to quarter. Some of them are very different, and some of them we're at the mercy of the state's calculations for their numbers. So it just depends on which ones. But we do our best using trending of the previous years.
That's
But they
good.
do tend to come in about the same time year to year, so that part's good.
Yeah, I like them to understand that. Okay.
How far back on your trending do you go? Previous year, 5 years?
We try to use 5 years, but if you start looking at the detail that's in the 5 years, if it starts looking inconsistent, then I don't use it. If it's somewhat consistent, like the date patterns are about right, something like that, then I have some confidence that there's something there that I can utilize.
And then there's another one you mentioned about the refugees collection.
Yes,
I'm impressed on this. I mean, we budgeted 4 million on revenue, 1.8 million, and then we've been collecting it on year to date 2.1 million, and then almost 1 million on commercial.
right.
That's a good revenue. I mean, so we're actually on the 50%, and we are on 6 months already.
Right.
So we're in line on that.
Right,
That's a very
and
good budget.
The refuse contract is written in such a way that for the commercial side, which we've just recently started splitting out so that we can see it, we get a net amount on that contract. Then we go through calculations on our side and say, what would that have been worth as a fee service type of contract so that we have a actual gross number in the revenues that you see, and then you net it against the expense for the refuse. That net on commercial is actually the cash flow for the city. but at least we can see it now
Yep.
in a way that it makes more sense. So,
It is, very impressive on that. I mean, it's the revenue that we have. That's
Well,
good.
it should be impressive, we've been increasing our fees for the last 5, 6 years.
yeah, the refuse goes up, well, I mean, we don't have control over it. We go with their contract, but I want to say it goes up about 2% a year,
Yeah.
something
Well,
like
A lot
that.
of it has to do with the landfill, the dumping.
Right, the dumping fees.
Yeah, they continue increasing it.
Oh, they're ridiculously high now.
So, deja vu,
Deja vu.
how does it seem? Looking at this number, these numbers, this report, this form, being able to do your projections, your actual to date compared to where you were at this point last year.
I couldn't do a mid-year last year.
I know, and I want to make sure that we appreciate that progress from this time last year, where you could not have done this, to be able to present this preliminary draft and have it be so clear, so close, and so good.
My staff has done amazing work, and with just, there's total of us, there's 4, and we have, right now today, cash receipts have been posted to the general ledger through the end of January. Today's the 5th. They are doing an amazing job. Our payables are up to date. We're
And your
working
bank
on
reconciliations?
bank reconciliations are done through January the 31st, except for one account, which will be done tomorrow. So my staff has just been amazing, and now we're able to kind of get things on track and regular. So now we can work on some of the deeper issues that we need to work on, which at the moment is doing the budgeting analysis and starting the next year's budget and doing some project accounting investigation. We're trying to make sure everybody stays on the same page. But it's taken a lot to get us to where I can say we are up to date.
That's
Amazing. My understanding is that this hasn't happened for years.
Nope.
From the records you can see, it has not happened for years, and I think your staff deserves a lot of
Absolutely.
praise and thanks for that.
I want to clarify that. This has never happened.
Right. So never.
It's not, this is not just yet, this has,
As far
Never
as I know, it's
That's,
Yeah.
well, as far
With
as there are
real
any
numbers.
records of it.
Right.
With
and
real
that's what
numbers.
matters.
right with real numbers.
And
actual
that's
numbers.
tremendous. I think that was,
Yeah.
that was the goal that was desired, or what happened when you were hired and when this whole process started. And so I think it should be noted that
It's amazing.
we have gone so far and we're absolutely on track finally.
Yes.
now, I'm going to try to get a little update on the audit, which isn't really on the agenda, but you are talking about numbers and being able
And being up
provide
to date.
accurate information.
Correct. And my auditors will be beginning the fiscal 17 audit on Monday. So I will have them here working with me starting on Monday. So
Excellent.
And I think, you know, a lot of the public needs to understand, I think, that because of the financial situation the city of Beaumont was in terms of not really understanding where they were at financially, because there were a lot of mixing and matching and little funds and games and stuff going on. It is very difficult for an auditor to come in and take a look at a big old puzzle and try to put it all back together again. This is not a 50-piece, big piece puzzle. This is one of those 500-piece puzzles that you sit on your kitchen table and you spend 3 days trying to put together. It takes a lot of work, and I know it's probably frustrating for people who are watchdogs of government, which I love watchdogs of government. I think we need them in our society. It's frustrating for them because sometimes they don't understand or realize the time it takes to be able to get the correct numbers. Auditors aren't gonna come in and give you a clean audit unless they're confident that those numbers are correct.
right.
And to be able to put those together in a concise way and make the presentation for the audit. Again, my kudos to you and your staff.
Thank you.
at least getting it on track,
Right.
getting it going in the right direction.
Okay, I think, move on to December 2000.
Can I ask one more?
Absolutely.
Because I reviewed it this morning, this morning, back to that, the operating cost on your category 65. There's 1 million in there. I'd just like to understand, what's that 1 million? Is it a transfer or it's a negative, and there's no activities in there? Is it a refund or an expense out?
Which
Or a
one?
prepaid? What, back on your personal services after that, on the revenue,
Oh, in the back, you're looking at the details.
the details.
Okay, let me see. What page are you looking at?
Page 4 of 15.
415. Okay, let's see. Oh, yes.
Is it a transfer fund on that?
That is a transfer of administrative overhead from the enterprise funds back to the general fund. And I'm working with our consultant to make sure that the overhead allocations that I'm using are properly reflective in what they should be. So I haven't made that entry yet because we're making
Very
sure
good.
that it's
So
right.
it's only a reclassification of
Basically,
project.
right. It's
Thank you.
the enterprise funds paying their fair share of
Yeah, I figured out
administration.
that, but I'd like to clarify with you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we move on to December 2017 financial report.
Yes, and that had a lot of pages. After we had gone through what the committee would like to see on a monthly basis versus a quarterly basis, this is the quarterly package. So there's a lot of pages, a lot of detail. The one thing, well, no, not the one thing, but there are a few things that you got tonight to put into this report. The first is, and you'll see it was in the original, but there's the vendor payments over $10,000. I gave you new pages because I must have been asleep when I put the first ones in because I had not finished filling in the purposes for all the vendors. So there were a bunch of blanks. I looked at that this morning and thought, whoops. So you have new ones that include all of the purposes of all the different vendors. And then also the one report, the treasurer's report, number 5 on the list. You were handed that one this evening as well. That tells you the status of all of the cash balances by the fund groupings. Could not get it to balance on Friday, so I decided it was better to get the rest of it published for the committee, and we would have that one for this evening separate. So, like I said, there's a lot of detail. I wasn't even 100% sure how to go through and give you analysis on it, so I thought I just would see if you had questions, if there's particular areas that it would have been helpful, if there was more explanation. There was just so much that if I started the analysis, I was afraid it would be too much.
I think for me, because they're new, I'm going to look at it between now and the next meeting, the next time, to kind of piece it together and see what fits and where my questions are.
And that's fine. And you can always send me the questions that you have, and I can present them back to the committee at the next meeting with all of the answers as well. Anyone on the committee can certainly forward me questions. There is a tremendous number of pages and a lot of details there.
And it's all new to us, too.
It's all new. So this is the first quarterly package for the committee. So we're just getting started on the monthly and quarterly, what are you going to get, what are you going to see? So
Anybody have questions for right now?
Quick question.
Sure.
Just informational on the vendor payments.
Yes.
Is Webb fulfilling 2 roles, and where they're CFD bond consultants?
Yes.
But are they also the engineering and design for the wastewater too?
Yes, I did not realize all of the different specialties that fall under the Albert A. Webb umbrella, but yes, they are providing both of those services. Different teams, of course, it would not be the same person, but the CFD administration is the group that I deal with, probably weekly, and then we have the wastewater plant expansion, the design and engineering, and that's a different group there. They are also handling that.
Are we handling that under a different category for disbursements? piece, or is
Yes.
it's all one?
Each piece has its own purchase order. And for the wastewater expansion, when that's captured in the general ledger, it's captured in the wastewater fund. For the CFD administration, that's captured in the CFD administration fund. So we're making sure that purchase orders are separate and that they're accounted for in the proper funds when we actually do then make the payments. But this is the total amount of all of the payments from July 1st through the end of December to just the vendor, regardless of what the purpose was for.
And they're awarded, of course, the contract under two different RFP processes.
Yes.
Different validations and qualification processes.
Yes.
And I have a general question too.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed there are 11 different engineering vendors. I'm assuming are they all different projects?
Yes, they are.
So they're specific to a project and an RFP.
Yes, they are. And Public Works, because there was no Public Works being done for a year and a half, there's a lot of projects that just had ceased or had never been started. So there's quite a jump start, and it's taken that many to get that many projects moving all at the same time. And that's been challenging on its own. But we are keeping track of them. They do have purchase orders, and we're making sure that nothing pops up that we weren't already anticipating. They're all within budget.
I have a question on the the reports, all that data that was associated with our agenda.
Yes.
And it's a very generic, general question. I noticed on a lot of the departments' budgets that there was zero budgeted for sick leave, holiday, and overtime.
Not overtime.
Well, overtime, there were a lot of zeros there.
It depends on the department. Some departments don't necessarily experience overtime, so we don't budget for it. Those that do have an overtime on a consistent basis, they budget their overtime. As far as sick, holiday, and vacation, that's part of just the base salaries budget number, because we don't budget how much of the salaries will be taken as vacation or sick. We just say it's all salaries. But overtime is something, if a department has significant overtime, they're required to budget for it.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that it shows as a negative on the budget, because nothing was budgeted for it, and then you have $28,000 in expense. So it comes as a negative on there. And I went and totaled up a lot of them, and it was $200,000-300,000. I mean, that to me is a significant amount of money. That's showing a negative. It's like a negative balance on the budget. And I don't know if there's a way to somehow do a better job of estimating those categories and putting them in the budget so that it's reflective of what actually gets paid out. I know it's kind of hard, and I know it's a lot of the things in the salaries, but from a budgetary standpoint, to the average person out there looking at the budget, if anybody wants to look at the budget, they're gonna see nothing was budgeted for sick leave, and here's $28,000 that's been paid out in sick leave.
Right.
What's going on here? Isn't the department head aware that he or she's gonna have to pay out overtime, or?
Right. And I can tell you, when I've been doing the analysis, the only way that I can do it because of the budgeting in this manner is I add together salaries, overtime, sick, holiday, vacation, accrued time, cash out, and other compensation. So I have that in a separate, like, hiding line, so I can see what the total budget and the total of all the actuals are, and I make sure that in total, all those categories coming together are accurate, that we don't have something under budgeted. So when you net all of them together by department, it comes out okay. So I have been doing the analysis by adding them all up, only because you're right, we don't budget them independently. So the only way I can look at it is in total, and it doesn't reflect here because I had to manually do it in another spot.
Do we have the ability, or does our vendor have the ability to remove those categories that will always show us a zero, so it isn't a flag that runs up to every
Well, the only
citizen who
right,
is looking at this?
the option we have is to not record the payroll, vacation, and sick, but to record it as salaries, just salaries, because they earned it. So they had vacation coming, but it's still their salary because they earn so many hours. It's still salary. We budget for a full salary. And so we could do that by not showing the sick and the vacation. But we need that for statistical reasons, which takes me back to either finding a way to subtotal salaries as a one line item for review purposes, or we have to budget for every one of these different pieces, like contingency type line items. Yes.
Typically, I mean, it's sick leave, for example. Isn't that, do they accrue, employees accrue benefits for a paid time off that can be used for both vacation or sick leave? Is it?
No, only for public safety, because they work 24/7 and are bus drivers. Everybody else, you can't use, they aren't interchangeable.
No, but I mean, for instance, if a single employee in a department is earning accrued time for paid time off, is it accrued separately for sick leave from other paid times off? So can that be accrued as a liability somewhere in the budget, so it's shown as a possible expense, because it is accruing over
It is
to a level
accrued.
that it might stop accruing depending on the employment.
Right. We do those evaluations too, to make sure no one goes over their caps. But we do the accrual, but we do that calculation only at the end of the year, because we have vesting percentages. And so that vesting percentage could change for different employees at different points during the year. So we don't even try to figure out that liability except at June 30. So we do know what that is. But the only time you end up paying out more than what we budget for salary is if they leave the city. So then you're forced to cash out their banks. Then you would have additional costs.
I personally, I would like to see it under salaries, but with maybe a parentheses under the salaries saying includes overtime, blah, 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 whatever. That way, when it goes out, it's part of the overall budget, and you don't have these negatives sitting
Right.
over there.
So having a subtotal, you think would be better than trying to budget the individual line items somehow to pull them all
Yeah,
together?
It almost looks like the department head forgot to
Right.
budget for it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it runs up a big flag.
Right.
Does the software give you the opportunity to put a note on there?
The only thing I can do with notes is add something to the account title. That's something that then would print on the report for you to see.
Is that something that you can look at in the next couple of months and see? Because I think if we consistently put out a document that shows zeros in places that.
For the budget.
that the public would think there should be a number in there. Why
Right.
are we not budgeting for that?
Okay.
Or you could do it, it's, we do this privately on the, when I was in the corporation, is we allocate man hours on every department. And because salaries, you have salary people and people are on hourly.
Right.
So there'll be, if people, publicly here, they see it, one chunk of salary, and then your overtime is only, let's say, I got 500,000 of salary, and then you got an overtime of what, 8,000 or something. There'll be a big difference because they don't understand what's the number on the 500,000. So you have to establish, we have to establish the man hour in every department on that if you will trace the overtime.
Right.
Because 1.5 or
Right.
200% on that.
Right. So I'll see if I can find a way for the report to generate
tough.
the way I look at it when I summarize all those accounts together. Because it does make more sense when you add
Yeah.
all the line items together.
Yeah, in seeking transparency, we don't
Yeah.
want to have a hole there
Right.
that particularly your common man will look at it and say, they've just forgotten this,
Right.
or trying to hide it.
Right. Right.
It does stick out because you go through each department, and not every department doesn't have anything budgeted.
Nobody has vacation budgeted. Nobody
Yeah.
has sick time budgeted. But the overtime they are supposed to have
Yeah,
budgeted.
and
So,
I know it's all included in the salaries.
okay, I will work on the reporting, see if I can get that to come up different. Okay.
Okay. So we're comfortable with that at this point in time, and we'll all look at it over the next little while and see if we have questions to come back to. So then we move to future agenda items. Anything that someone would like to see on the agenda for a future meeting or to be considered?
What was the public comment was about the general ledger? I didn't understand what the young lady was talking about, but I noticed a big ream of papers.
Yes, indeed.
I don't like a lot of paper, but anyway.
Right. For a future agenda item, we can discuss the financial reports and what's included or not included and why it's broken down in so many more ways now, which does generate more pages. I'm not sure if that's a future agenda item or if it's something that we can just discuss.
Do you say that in response to these reports or in response to the public comments? Or am I
Yes.
misunderstanding? Okay. Okay,
Yes and yes.
all right.
But I don't know how much the committee is familiar with the different types of financial reports, what a trial balance versus a general ledger versus an income
Sure.
statement versus a balance sheet.
I see.
And we could do that as a future agenda item where we talk about
Okay.
what each one is and what it includes and what we use it for.
I just think, when somebody makes the effort to come here and talk to us, I try to understand what they're trying to tell us. Oftentimes, I know sometimes they're not accountants, they're just general people that think something's not right. But anyway, I would hope that people would feel free to come and talk to us if they ever have a complaint. Therefore, if we can put this on the agenda, just to address it, like you said, we have some new people on the board, it's a good time to maybe, some of us have been here, we kind of understand it, but we do have some new people, it might be a good time to explain why we have what we have today, which we never had before, obviously. And that generates a lot more people.
Sure, I can definitely have something like that on the next agenda.
Well, what was, just for clarification, what was she talking about exactly? Because I got confused she kept going back to the past, to now the present, and I didn't know where she was at as to where she wanted us to even look.
I believe that the concern is that the general ledgers that she's gotten in the past were very small. And the general ledger that she requested from the current system is quite large. It's very lengthy, and that she hasn't gotten all of them. The general ledgers were on the portal. I had to take them down because I didn't realize right away that they contained information that's not supposed to be publicized.
Okay.
I have legal case numbers and names listed in the account descriptions themselves of 2 of the funds for sure. So I had to take them down until I can come up with a way to not have them all print, which I haven't
Okay.
figured that out. And then I have another account that lists names of open cases, and I can't
So are
have
they
that.
thicker now because there's more journal entries into them with more detail going into them?
There's 2 reasons, really. There is more. I've split out a lot more funds and a lot more accounts to try and separate information. The general ledgers that she got from the past, I've seen them, and they are not general ledgers. They are simply transaction journals. So she doesn't have it separated by account name.
Okay.
There's no subtotaling. It's just all the debits and all the credits, just all in one. So yes, that's much, much shorter. So it's a different level of detail that she has as well. So that's what she was
It's just the regular
comparing.
chart of accounts of what she has. Right.
What she has really is just the transactions. Every debit and every credit for the whole period, regardless of what fund it was for, regardless of what account it was for, it's just, yeah. When you do the general ledger, you end up with title, subtitle, transactions, subtotals of the debits and the credits, final totals of both. And yeah, so it just, general ledger makes it just huge. Yeah.
Based upon the concerns of the past, legacy issues that we're evolving from and trying to improve them and address things going forward, there's a lot of emotions out there where people come up and express things. Is the staff, and I'm sure this is the answer is going to be yes to this, but is there a communication of how a citizen can get an item on the agenda? I mean, is there I mean, my past experiences,
This,
Not for the agenda. Any member,
there's no ability like
they
a city
don't
council.
put things on the agenda.
only the chair does that. But they can certainly put in,
At council meetings, they could do that though, but not,
No, they can bring up issues, and then the issue can be put on the agenda by council member, by staff, and it goes on to that after it sort of gets through the first level of review and deems to be something necessary that needs to be talked about in an open session on an agenda. Because you couldn't have where everything that every citizen wanted to bring as an issue drive the agenda, because you couldn't have that drive the
it's.
business, so to
The only reason I was bringing
speak.
it up because of my past experience on the other side of the bar, or whatever you want to call it, that situation, is I've been involved in different municipal issues, both in places where I had businesses or residence issues. And there has been past avenues available where there were rules for the city put together where a resident or a business could put something on the agenda item, whether it was appealing a planning department approval and it was going to the council, or if it was an item. And usually the clerk had a process where you could put together documentation, public notice. That's not available to, as far as adding.
I don't know of any, I don't know of any city that that's the way you get things on the agenda.
You're absolutely right.
I don't know of any city that does that.
Yeah, the process, basically, city.
I didn't mean to.
We're getting,
I didn't mean to.
we're really, we have to be careful,
We're
we're
getting
off
pretty
topic,
far.
which is
straight.
really what we are not allowed to get off topic.
Right.
We have to stay on what's been put as a
On the
public
agenda.
agenda. And so if we get into discussions on,
And whether or not
right,
something.
no, so you're right, but we just have to be careful,
Yeah,
we just have to be careful not to go too far with it, that's all.
yeah, to just ask a question is one thing, but.
Yeah.
But to come up with some alternatives.
We-
We're not charged with that. That's.
So
not
in
even under our
your,
umbrella.
in your review of reports and how you're going to put that together, make sure that you somehow include an understanding of the concerns that are brought up by the public.
Absolutely.
All right? So we'll make sure of that. And then, like, we don't even drive the council agenda. We're a committee that serves for the council. So at that point, if there's any concerns that are remaining, then we can bring that to council and ask for them to talk about that openly. I do think that, at least on my mind, there's two things potentially for future agendas. One of my favorites, the state controller's checklist, which I will never stop bringing up at every meeting until we have finally tied that with a ribbon. One more. I know. So I want, I want to be able to wrap up the state controller's checklist. So that for me is a future agenda item. And then
And I think,
keep us updated on the audit.
yeah, I think we had that, yeah, as a guesstimate of total implementation on March 31. I think that's been mentioned before.
The final GASB 34 adjustment, the date was January 31st and missed it, but I'm still working on it. So I'm hoping by February the 15th that I've got that nailed down so we can finish that. The audit, yes, will be March 31st, maybe to April 15th, right in there, so.
Well, if you just give us an update
Sure.
at the next meeting on how the audit process is going, that'll keep us in that loop. And then based on the schedule that we've talked about before for the state controller's checklist, if we get a significant update from you, then that would be good.
That would be
No?
awesome.
Everybody else agree
Yeah.
with that, or?
Yeah. Real good. All right. Then the next thing we have on our agenda is the retirement PERS update, which, we have a form here.
Indeed, it is a 3-page
Report.
memorandum. And I was trying to come up with a way to provide the information you need to understand the retirement plan for the city of Beaumont, which goes through CalPERS. There is a lot of talk about CalPERS. There's a lot of talk because the accounting standards have changed for how we record those liabilities. CalPERS has a couple of different types of plans. They have retirement plans, and they have what everybody refers to as OPEB, other post-employment benefits, where the municipality says, okay, when you retire, we will pay your health premiums until you pass. Beaumont doesn't have that. I'm very happy to say we don't have to work on trying to figure out the OPEB liabilities and what we owe and what we have that's going to come out of the future budgets of the city of Beaumont. So we do not have the OPEB issues that get bandied about. We do have the retirement plan. The retirement plans, there are many of them, just like as in regular businesses. There are 401ks and 403bs and profit sharing plans. Sometimes the employer matches, sometimes the employer doesn't. It just depends. With CalPERS, we have essentially 4 plans. We have employees who are considered classic, and they are a miscellaneous employee or they are a public safety employee. Then we have those who are considered PEPRA, which means they're not a classic member. We have miscellaneous employees and we have public safety employees. Those are the 4 plans the city of Beaumont participates in. There's a cutoff date that determines whether or not you are a classic member or you are a PEPRA member. That date is not your date of hire with the city. That is the first time you are ever eligible for CalPERS. So it could have been 18 years ago, you spent 6 weeks working for the county and you were eligible. So now you've come back, now you're a classic member because you were eligible before that cutoff date in 2013. So we don't get to determine whether you're a PEPRA or a classic member. Everybody is miscellaneous except for our sworn officers. Sworn officers are considered public safety. So not our 911 dispatch, not our animal control, not our code enforcement officers, just the police officers themselves. Their plan is more robust. It's a lot higher, and that's because they put their life on the line to protect the citizens of the city. And that's how that was built on those 2 structures through CalPERS. So we participate in these 4 plans, and everyone just would refer to them by numbers. 2% at 50. And I was always, I don't know what you're talking about. And eventually, you know, as you work your way through things, you find out, okay, that means you're eligible for full retirement at age 50. 2%, okay, from your date of eligibility, you get 2% of your salary goes into that you would get paid out for every year that you have of service. So those percentages, that's like the quick way of figuring out what your retirement benefit would be upon your retirement. When we have payroll in most places, the employee pays their portion and the employer matches their portion and it goes off and gets contributed. In Beaumont, before I got here, the city paid all of it. All of it. Employees paid none at all. Because that's a pretty steep adjustment, when everything went down and we all started showing up and taking over the management, the reins, we said, okay, we won't make you pay all of your portion all at once. We're going to go slowly over 3 years. And you can see in the memo that how it is we have it coming up so that by July 1st of this year, all the employees will be paying their employee portion. Finally, we will have everybody doing their own. The city will only be paying its share that it's supposed to, just like every other city. We're now finally going to be like every city manages their CalPERS contributions. We make our contributions, what's withheld in our match, and the extra we have to make up for the part that isn't paid by the employee, and all of that is then sent to CalPERS. We make those contributions 30 days, around 30 days from the date of the payroll, and mostly that's because we have to re-input every single individual and their salary and then their website then recalculates, we make sure it matches the payroll, and we put all those numbers in, and by the time you've redone every one of everybody, and that's 150 people, then you can transmit and make your payment. So there's a very time-consuming process that we're going through. So it's about 30 days when we finally make that contribution. We now have our new payroll software. It's the same provider, but we finally got up to their current product, and we're working on a file that can be generated automatically at the payroll date that we can then submit to CalPERS, so we don't have to re-input everything, so that they can do the checking, and then we just wire them the funds and we're done. And we can then make those contributions much more quickly, more timely, and we won't have that huge time-consuming issue. The big concern, though, is not with the ongoing CalPERS contributions. The real concern is that unfunded liability that everybody talks about. And that unfunded liability just keeps growing. It's the same as with Social Security. There's so much being paid out, but there's not enough being paid in. It's the same process. And it's because at that retirement date, you have an expectation. You will be getting X number of dollars. You know what it's going to be. It's the same with Social Security. You know how much you're going to get. If the assets haven't built up enough, technically they aren't there for the payout, but you have the obligation, so you still got to pay it out, and you end up upside down. CalPERS is heading in that direction too, just like Social Security. So what they've started talking about are these unfunded liabilities. How do you make up your difference for what you're going to need as your employees retire down the road? And there's a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of ratios. There's a lot of actuaries, and they talk about it, and they go around and around. Well, how much should the liability be? Because the standard said, okay, no more of this, pushing it off down the road. Let's come up with some way of measuring how much all these cities and other governments owe for these future benefits they've promised people that they haven't put the money in for. And they've kicked around doing this and that, cash discount rate, this rate, that rate. And CalPERS had set their investment rate at a certain point, and they had put their cash discount rate at a certain point. And the big discussion right now is their cash discount rate. They have it at 7.5%, and they just bumped it down to 7%. It made all of our unfunded liabilities jump up. Not a lot, but they're jumping up. And it's a significant amount that we have to pay in the unfunded liabilities now, so it's just going to keep climbing. The big debate is, what should it be? And there are people who are saying that that discount rate should be 3%. That's it. It should be 3% based on the economy, based on all the conditions. It should be 3%. The problem is, if they move that to 3%, there's no municipality with enough money to make up the unfunded liability. And it's all a guessing game. What should the discount rate be? 5, 3, 7, 12? You know, which way should it go? Are we using the right mortality tables? Are they using the right interest rates? Are investments going to keep going up or go down? The Dow went down today, so we lose value, but tomorrow it may go back up, and nobody knows how this is all going to land. But the question has become, how do we hedge our bets? How do we put money in to help cover that future cost? And there's a lot of investment vehicles that they're coming up with now. The big one right now is the irrevocable 115 trust. There are a few cities who are starting that, and they have their reasons, and they think it's a great thing to do. My position on this whole unfunded liability is to give it a little more time and see what the big cities come up with. What are they going to do? Because then we can follow suit, or we can go in on their coattails, something where we're not spending all of our time, energy, and effort trying to come up with the solution. Let them come up with the solution, and then we can go with them. In the meantime, get our financial position strengthened so that we have some reserves, so that when the time comes, we can do something about it. Because that's our other position right now. We don't have the resources to just throw a bunch of money into a trust and let it sit there for the future of the retirement plans that the city has. We need to really be sure we take care of right now and build towards the future. So that is my update on CalPERS. And like I said, there's a lot of talk. You'll hear a lot of different comments about it. And it all comes down to looking into a crystal ball and trying to decide what's going to happen in the future. if anybody has any questions. I kind of went off on that, sorry.
That's good.
Yes,
So I was just looking at the first paragraph, there was a time and a place that where they determined that they needed to have this payment. And the agencies didn't want to make the full payment at one time. They had up to 20 years to make the payment.
Right.
So I'm assuming this payment of 77,000 plus is our monthly payment. We are contributing to that unfunded liability based upon that demand that was made at a date in the past.
right. And I think there's a little bit of it that's kind of building into the future, but not that much of it.
So do we know what the amount was that was asked for at that one-time event?
No, I don't have the documents for that. Although if I
How long
wanted
ago
to
was
know, I'm sure CalPERS could help me out with that. I want to say, when I was doing audits, it came out maybe 9 or 10 years ago.
Okay.
It came out where the market had come down so much, the recession had hit the investment so hard that CalPERS thought everyone needed to put in more money because the assets had dropped in value so much.
So is it safe to assume that the city's been making a monthly payment as part of that 20-year payment plan since 9 or 10 years ago when that event happened?
Yes, CalPERS is quite particular. If you don't make payments, they will call you. So you make sure you're up to date on those things. And we knew that we had unfunded liability payment we were making every month, but in having the entire staff completely change, what we didn't pick up is that there's an unfunded for the miscellaneous and there was an unfunded for the public safety. And so we were making one and not the other, and they went, no, you can't do that. You got to make them both. So got that fixed right away. So I know they will call you. They definitely will let you know if you're messing up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Personally, I think we're kind of at the mercy of CalPERS since that's our system.
Mm-hmm.
And they are going to pretty much dictate as they see it, because, all their investments are pretty much in the market. The market goes up, you don't hear much talk about unfunded liability. The market goes down, you hear a lot about unfunded liability. And, but it is a problem in the sense that, people do crunch numbers and they say, okay, if tomorrow we have, 10% of the employees leave, we might be hurting, we might have a big problem. If there was a mass exodus for some reason there. Not that that could happen, but, again, I'm with you. I think, we comply with what CalPERS requests and we see what the big players, because liabilities of LA, City of Los Angeles, they're a lot bigger than that.
I've seen what this is, and holy moly,
Yeah.
it's
So, they're gonna come up with something, I'm sure, to ease their pain a little bit, and maybe if we could, like I say, coattail on, I think it's a good strategy. I don't think, right now, we don't have a lot of money, we're working towards getting more money, but I don't think we need to give it all away, right away.
right. And this is the GASB 68 that we talked about with the audit, that giant liability for no really good reason. Well, that's what this is driving all of this. It's all the same thing. So.
This was a good update. This was well-written and well done. Yeah.
You should see what they gave me. I have booklets. I think I have 2 of them. They're like this, and I thought, no, cannot do that. So.
We're, I don't know if it's a good word, but basically we're at their mercy and we're going to do what they require us to do.
Right.
And we'll be like everybody else. We'll handle it as well as we can and it simply is what it is.
Right. So when you hear people talking about it, at least you have an understanding of what it is, what it means to Beaumont specifically, and it'll hopefully make some sense.
Okay,
I have a question.
sure.
It relates to the potential future agenda items, so I apologize for trying to take a tiny step back. Is it worthwhile to get an update on the reporting from Wilmington Trust? Or do you want to, is there not much to report on
There's
that?
not much to report.
Okay.
We have those reconciled through January 31st as well.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
we are doing really well.
All right.
Staying up with it, and their online reporting, we're getting used to it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right. Well, then I think we're ready to to hit our meeting review and the treasurer's report that will be generated.
Well, I will just be talking about the election of a vice chair and the reporting. In particular, we wanted the salaries, sick pay and vacation, et cetera, summarized. And that we would like to be updated on the audit next meeting and the SEO checklist. And then what we went over with the retirement. I mean, it's,
Anybody have any comments? Appears to cover it for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. Everybody should know about the council meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. We're going to have
Yes.
a general presentation by the consultant doing our general plan update.
Yes.
If you're interested in coming to hear about what the city might look like down the road, come to your meeting, come to the meeting.
Okay, if we have nothing else, let's go ahead and adjourn it.
Oh, and I'll just end at the city council meeting tomorrow night. We are also having a presentation by WRCOG. So if you want to also stay for the rest of the city council meeting, I forget what, I think it's agenda item 3. And so that means it's early on in the meeting. So if you'd like to stay for getting the presentation from WRCOG, it will help you to understand how they take TUMP fees, what they do, and why things didn't work for us before, and why they're working better for us now. So,
Then we will adjourn at 7:13. And our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 6th.